It is March 6th, 2021. Would you be able to give us your first and last name?
First name is Wilton, Wilton. Middle initial James, and last name is Gill, Gill.
Okay. Mr. Gill, where did you grow up?
Huh?
Where did you grow up? Where were you born?
Where did I grow up?
Or where were you born? Let's start
in
with
Houston, Texas.
Okay. Did you grow up in Houston, Texas?
Yes.
Okay. How did you arrive to Kansas City?
Well, I met a girl that was one night over to my sister's birthday party, and she had such a good time, and she lived here, and that's how I ended up coming up to see her and ended up staying.
Okay.
So it was through kind of like, well, you call it probably, I met this young lady and started dating on and just stayed up here.
Okay.
You know.
Okay.
She worked for Dobbs International. She worked at the airport, and she was a supervisor at Dobbs International. So she lived up here, and that's how I ended up coming up, spend the weekend with her, and ended up staying, the 20 years later.
Right.
Yeah.
What did you do for fun here in Kansas City?
Well, like I said again, the biggest part for me when I first got here was not used to snow. And, just being in a place where you're locked in, you can't go out, that was definitely difficult. Mm-hmm. And then I got a job at the Hilton. Went up there and got a job washing dishes. And got good at that and moved out there. Went over to a place, housekeeping. Started working in the banquets, setting up ballroom dances, and a lot of the, Italian weddings and stuff like that. They came in, had functions going on, parties, and so I started working at the Hilton. Mm-hmm. And like I said again, I was there for probably a couple of years.
When did you start working with the Dunn Construction Company?
Well, that was probably a little on down the road there, probably 5 years later. I kind of knew concrete work, and I guess for me, at the time, working at the Marriott downtown, and the pay was definitely not, it was not really good. And then the part that I didn't like, just being on a place where they kind of had you under, surveillance. They always made sure, he was on radar. So I think I was up there for probably a year, and then I finally got somebody to tell me about how to get in on construction, and that's when I went to the union, which was 518, and that's when I got a job. After I become a union man, they would send me out on a lot of what they call heavy construction, where you see them working on bridges and overpass and stuff like that. And then I did pretty good. I stayed on and started working a lot of the commercial. So I got a chance to work on that AT&T downtown, that big old, and went out all the way out to that place out there in the airport. I worked on Terminal A when they did that full-service parking garage out there. J. Dunn was the one that did the concrete work. And there was a bunch of places all around the city. They pretty much had me, 1 week I'd be with this company, and wherever they had to need more men to do concrete work, finishing work, that's what they would send me. So I was kind of, that's how I kind of learned Kansas City, because working with J. Dunn, they had me just all over, and that's where it was interesting, because like I said again, I'd have never learned all of that if I had got that job about the Kansas City.
Is there anything that you disliked about working with the Dunn Construction Company? Is there anything that you disliked about working with the Dunn Company?
Well, I tell you what, it was a pretty good company because I mean they paid me really good money. Back at that time it was $26 an hour, and it was a lot of fun until I got where somebody says, you know, you can get too good, and sometimes you get yourself in trouble because now people want you, and a lot of the big shots, they wanted me on their job because they knew I was a good hard worker. And the boss man, which was one I was working under, his name was Davy Walker. And that man didn't like the idea. They wanted to take me away from him because I made him look good. And it got to be a conflict. And I would imagine this one last round, one individual came up and said, we want JJ. And that really got him warm. So he kind of had a chip on his shoulder. And he said, I tell you what, I'm the one that's got you and put you in position. You think you all that now, so I'm going to shut you down. So he put me downtown in the garage, down in the basement. I was down there for a month, chipping on columns. And that was a nightmare for me because it was cold at that time. And you know how in the bottom of the ground, I mean, that cold sets down low. And he did that just to keep everybody from trying to get me to come on their different jobs. So that was a big old something that I called, man, I never would have thought he would have done that to me to just, everybody was asking where JJ was.
Tell them about the story.
They
Tell them
wouldn't
about
even
the story
tell
you
them the
did when
truth.
you did the dig.
Hmm?
Tell them about the dig, the story that you did when you did the dig, when they had to call you out there and you did the big dig. That's the reason that got all that attention because they knew you were really good.
Yeah, yeah, that's funny. Yeah, no kidding. I guess they had on the side of a wall. They had to get all down about, I would imagine probably 10 feet down in the ground. 20, it's probably 50 by 75. And they couldn't get a backhoe in there. So it had to be dug out by hand. And all the other three black guys, man, they didn't want no parts of it. So I jumped in. I said, hey, not a big thing for me. I didn't have nothing better to do but say it's all in a job that says it's work. So every day, man, I went out there and with a sharpshooter, square point shovel, and a bucket of water. I went all the way down in about 2-3 weeks, 13 feet down the ground with a sharpshooter and shovel. And they said they'd never seen a black man could go down and dig and by hand. So that really got their attention because, I mean, I've always been a person that was, if you told me to do this, I always did it the right way. No shortcuts by doing it the old-fashioned. Somebody said, just do enough to get by. I always was one of those people that took pride in whatever I had to do, you know. So it was a big deal. I dug it, and all those white, I never forget that they was all up on the top. They was looking down in. They was like, man, never see anything like that. So that was the big old thing that everybody was up roaring about for a long time. All I can say is just it was a day where it was work. And when I have to do work, I can do it. It makes my day go faster. And those guys that didn't like work, they like smoking weeds, hollering behind columns, trying to find out, man, what ways they can take shortcuts. And that's never been my style. So I have a lot of what they call passion in what I do. Sometimes I couldn't do all the things all educated individuals could do so well because they could read. And one of my stipulations was I had a handicap. It was not that I had a defect, I just was never taught to read. And all my life I had to find ways to work around it. So I would have problems with sometimes people filling out my W-4 or, applications. Sometimes when we got in there, I'd always have to ask somebody, hey, look here, what that says. You know what I mean? And that was probably the hardest journey for me, because when you have to ask questions, and once people found out you got that, oh my God, it's always where you get humiliated, people talk down to you. Sometimes they make you feel like you're nobody, because guess what? They found out that one part of you didn't work. So they always, for me, I got the worst of the jobs. It always made me do the really hard work, all because I couldn't read. And that's after they found out. So the labor I could do because it didn't require reading. So in the meantime, it was a job that I could do. And sometimes when I needed to find information, like if we had something that I didn't understand, I would get somebody that I didn't want everybody to know, but I would find a way to get that information. Once I got the information, I could always hide under the cover. You know what I mean? So all my life has been just very difficult because of that one defect. And I say for anybody that don't have it, they always don't know what it's like when you don't know how to put the symbols together, and everything you do, you have to be guided by someone to show you directions or ask people for help. And I tell you what, it's so embarrassing, because now you got all these people that can do that with no flaws whatsoever, and they always be pushed up on the highest part, and everybody recognizes, oh man, yeah, and I always had to stay back because of that defect. So the story goes on. As the world turns, I could always find work if it was labor, but the real jobs I could never get because that requires reading. So I'd always had that little in the back of the mind. One of these moments in time, I'd hope I could find that way to overcome that.
Are there any other obstacles that you faced?
Huh?
Are there any other obstacles that you have faced?
Well, we're what do you mean?
In general, what you have told me about what you
Discrimination.
saw. Discrimination. Any discrimination?
Well,
So
yeah,
once you went through, bring them through your phases. So you get to the accident part of J.E. Dunn. Go ahead and give them the story of your accident with J.E. Dunn, and then go from there. How you rehabilitated yourself. You did the 2000 Missouri State Bodybuilding Contest. Take them through your phases so they'll have, and it's with J.E. Dunn. Once you did all that good stuff for J.E. Dunn, you built a lot of stuff around the Missouri and Kansas area. You was one of their main guys. You have the accident, you don't feel you was treated fairly in compensation, but because you couldn't read, so many people took advantage of you, and then you found another way to rehabilitate yourself. That's been your story.
Right. And look at it again, I can go back to the Hilton job, when I got that job in the kitchen. This little chef, she was an oral lady, and boy, that little old lady just definitely had hate for me. I didn't even know the lady. I didn't know that. I never had no conflict with her. And she would see me washing those dishes, and I always was good at what I did, so I got done with everything they brought in. And she would come around that corner and see me standing there, and oh God, that just run her nuts. So she started bringing more stuff in. I was like, man, what is her problem? And I got to where everything she brought in, I got that down. And boy, that lady came back around at us around 3 and show you. So she brought all these big old pots in, had to scrub the gawk out in the bottom of the stained pots. Well, guess what? I got that done so good. And she come around that corner and saw me standing there, and boy, that lady was red hot, because she thought she had me put in a position that was going to take me a lot longer, but I knew how to get that done, and I always did things with ease. Man, that lady come back in there with 100 potatoes, man. Now she's got a big box of them and tells me to wash all them darn potatoes. But she wanted them white and clean. And I thought I was washing dishes. And that lady, man, she laughed out. I saw she had this little smirk on her face. And she came back around that corner. I had them all cleaned up. Oh, man, that pissed her off. And at that point, she was about to go do something else, but it was time for me to go. So I got out of there. Oh, man, that was a long day. But what I'm saying, as I tell that story, that lady was definitely, didn't like the idea because I was a black man, and I was a black man that always every time she brought it in, I stayed on top of it. So I knew that lady didn't like me, and I finally got some opening at housekeeping, and I went over there to Hilton and started working at banquet, and that's when I went over on that side, and that's when she came back and said, "What, are you working today?" "No, ma'am." And the lady was so mad because she wanted to do more to me. That lady just hated me. And when she found out I was over to this other housekeeping, I guess she must have felt better, because I guess a couple of days later they found her. She had stole some bacon, big old thing of bacon, in a purse, and they had her on camera. They caught her going out the back door. And I said, man, why? That was kind of crazy. The lady stealing bacon out of all things, you know what I'm saying? And they got her, they had fired her. And I was feeling pretty good, because I was like, see, what goes around comes around. Mm-hmm. She got hers. Mm-hmm. I never would have thought she'd been stealing bacon. You know what I'm saying? So those kind of events have happened for me. I've been around a lot of white folks at the time didn't like niggers, and that's the word they use. I didn't know I was in a state that was called, this is a slave state, was Missouri. And like I said again, I ran into all kind of problems on different places that I went in, because I didn't know. I went into this 55 Chevy club, and I didn't know black was not supposed to be in there. I went in there, and these two rednecks, boy, they was ready to put a whooping on me. And the bartender came up and said, well, he didn't know, so leave him alone. So I bought him a round of beer and got out of there. And just like I said again, I mean, I always kind of stayed back. I didn't always push myself out too fast, or put myself in a position where I would threaten or do things to make people feel uncomfortable. I kind of gradually walked in certain times when individuals would say, who is that person? And I'd get to talking to them, and they found out I was a big gentle bear. They always like, man, that dude is nice. His aura is just in a good place. And I met a lot of good friends, people that I didn't have back home, as, brothers and sisters didn't treat me that good. So it was a good thing. It was a good transformation for me to be here at that time, because,
What year was that about?
Huh?
What year was that about?
Back in '89. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's when all of the, like I said again, I kept trying to figure out where was all the black people at, and I finally stopped off at a Quick Trip, and I went in there and asked the little guy, man, where all the black people at? He said, 8 states. He looked at me funny. He's like, okay, what? And then he said, wait, they live over in Kansas City, Kansas. I said, well, where is that? He said, well, you get on 635 and get off on, 635 go and get off on, cross the river, he said. And you over in Kansas City, Kansas. So it took me about 4 months before I got the courage to take that little journey. And I got on 635, crossed the river, got off on 18 and Quindara. And as I got down on Quindara, oh boy, Town, I seen all the brothers, the Peace Barbershop, and dudes out there on the corner drinking their beers and stuff like that. Because when I came up here, it was no blacks, none, in this area, you know. I remember that sign up on that river, black was not supposed to be over here after midnight. And they finally took it down. Yeah, I saw all that.
Wow.
You know what I mean? So yeah, it was the only reason I got in because, like I said again, the girl that I was dating, she worked at the airport, and I lived up here in the Northland with her. You know what I mean? I think if I had to, when I first got here, would have been over in Kansas City, Kansas, I don't think I'd have stayed because that was too much like Houston, Texas. You know what I mean? And being over here on this side of the river, oh my God, it was a new experience. And people started to treat me somewhat nicer than my own black folks. I know that sounds funny, but yeah. So it was, like I said again, it was a transition, a healing place over here on this side. And then once I got to that gym, that was really that second win for me because that allowed me to slow down on, you know, hanging out around happy hours, watching all the good-looking people have fun.
Was you still working for J.E. Dunn at that time?
Yeah.
You were still working for them at that time?
Yeah. I used to love to dance, so I used to go to Donovan's, a club called Donovan's up, and that was my, I did that for a little bit until I went into this little ironworks gym, and that's when I saw all the little knuckleheads walking around with their little buff bodies. I said, I'd like to be like that. And that's what got me into personalized training. I mean, bodybuilding. I mean, I wouldn't say that. At that time, I just kind of came in, didn't have no experience on anything. And like I said again, just was in there. That was a place to work out, be around a different breed of people. Ones that was working out, looking to make themselves look better, versus the people that I associate with back in Texas. They all drank and just kind of let themselves go, and it was two transitions. That transition and the transition I got a chance to experience. I slowed down completely on the drinking, really put a lot more emphasis on working out. And that was a rehabilitation for me because that time, you know, that was the best thing could have done good for me because of, you know, where I came. The lady that I was with, she had different ideas, and I guess she found other ways to have her fun. And then when I found out she was having fun without me, then I decided to break away from her. So I ended up here, and it was all new for me and new territory and exciting at some points, you know, because I'd never been in snow. I never knew anything about all the things that was in Kansas City, Missouri. It was a venture.
Okay, so after the